Hi everyone. Bozu in Lifou-Kanak language and bonjour en français. So it is an honor to be here this afternoon to introduce this panel about ESD and school practices in New Caledonia. So I will make a quick introduction, like 5 minutes, and after that we will begin. So first I want to remind them that since the beginning of this century, from primary school, Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD, has found its place in the French education system in the context of the rise of Education 4. Besides, SD is taught as part of geography curriculum in middle and high school in the French education system. In New Caledonia, the development of ESD is part of the implementation of national, which means French, and instructions. In this French territory, ESD is presented by the local education administration authority website as, I quote, a cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary education, which makes it possible to understand the contemporary world in its complexity, taking into account existing interactions between environment, society, economy, and culture. Students are trained in good practices that enable them to live together in a resource-constrained world by acquiring the knowledge, competence, and culture that will allow them, through their lives as citizens, to know, understand, decide, and act according to the challenges of sustainable development. Taking into account these recent evolutions, this panel intends to address some aspects of the implementation of ESD in school practices in New Caledonia. The presentations will address various topics related to the place of SD in school curricula and teachers' practices, the involvement of students in actions related to SD, developing collaborations with multiple school partners, the development of innovative projects in a digital environment, the difficulties and problems related to the introduction of SD in school practices, spaces and actors of ESD inside and outside schools, the Kanak approach of SD. To emphasize on this topic, I chose to translate the beginning of the Kanak People Charter, written in 2014 by the Customary Senate of New Caledonia. I quote, "Melanesian populations, like other indigenous peoples in the world, have a vision of the cosmos, a relationship to space, a social organization, and a customary practice that tends to a permanent search for balance and harmony." And I think this is the major issue for us related to SD. It is this dialectical vision, lived every time in unique conditions around the world, that indigenous peoples transmit from generation to generation, and which gives them infinite capacities for adaptation and resilience, as evidenced by the Kanak society in New Caledonia. Eventually, this panel will address the concept of SD in order to see how it could be a factor promoting educational success for students, especially for Kanak students in the multicultural context of New Caledonia. So for presentation, we'll address these issues. My colleague Amandine Touitou will be the first to speak. Amandine teaches geography in our School of Education. She will address the topic of teaching SD in geography classes. Then we will listen to Paul Wongsowikromo and Mathieu Solier, representing the Catholic School Network in New Caledonia, who work a lot on ESD in Catholic schools. Third, Gérald Giacomino, who works at Touitou Middle School in UVA as Senior Education Advisor. He will present a project related to SD in his school. And finally, Jean-François Loisel, a PhD student at UNC, will present another project named EPOP, which aims to make students actors of SD and of the preservation of the environment. So every presentation will be between 15 and 20 minutes, and we begin with Amandine Touitou for her presentations. Thank you very much.
Merci. The French curriculum is a part of a global shift following the recommendation of the United Nations as a decade between 2005 and 2014 to promote sustainable development through education. Teaching environmental issues and sustainable development has been introduced gradually since 2004 as a subject of study, as well as a tool to encourage citizenship. Moreover, this evolution is taking place in the context of social demand for environmental concern, which began in the early 1970s in Western countries and France. Specifically, the French education plan proposes two ways to deal with SD. A concrete and practical way consisting in a cohesive education for sustainable development. This multidisciplinary approach consists of innovative pedagogy supported by teachers of different academic disciplines. For example, teachers in literature, life sciences, mathematics, arts, and so on are free to define their own pedagogical projects. As we can see here in Académie de Toulouse, pupils led by life sciences and art teachers are promoting SD by creating a green wall in order to rehabilitate streets surrounding their high school. Combining the values and priority guidelines of the National Education Plan alongside those of their own establishment, they promote SD in a pragmatic way. In parallel, the French education plan defined a theoretical way to learn what is SD. Two academic disciplines are in charge of teaching sustainable development as a subject of instruction, which are natural and life sciences, and geography, the specific field that we are in charge of. In geography, it consists in teaching educational contents from the viewpoint of sustainability. For example, issues surrounding demographic growth, social inequity, the question of natural resources access as water, mineral, and energy resources, are the subject of space management in fragile natural environments are related to SD. In geography, sustainable development became a central theme, and pupils are confronted to it almost every year from the primary school. In secondary school, SD is the common thread in geography program for the 7th grade, which means pupils between 12 and 13 years old, and the 10th grade, 15 to 16 years old. But it's also a key theme in the 9th grade, 14 to 15 years old, and the 11th grade, 16 to 17 years old, where the focus moved to land use planning in France and Europe. The approach of sustainability in French educational plan is based on the declaration of the Rio Earth Summit 1992, as well as the Brundtland Report 1987. Its definition is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainability would be at the meeting point of the three environmental, social, and economical pillars. Nevertheless, despite of its mandatory nature for teachers and pupils, sustainable development teaching creates lots of difficulties for teachers identified by several Francophone researchers in geography and in educational sciences. They highlighted, first of all, a lack of scientific and theoretical basis of the idea of sustainability. As a political project, the definition of SD was extraordinarily malleable since it has been first mentioned in the Brundtland report. Its definition varies between a restricted meaning, that is the temporal solidarity between generations, a medium acceptation, which include worldwide solidarity, and a large or extra-large definition extended to other principles, that is to say, the UN's cultural and good governance pillars defined by UN's in 2002. Vincent Clément characterizes SD as a nomadic concept, wondering if SD really is an operational concept, because we do not know neither which are the generations to consider, nor how to define their particular needs. Would it be on a worldwide scale or a local scale? So we understand that SD seems to raise more questions than give answers. Secondly, sustainability has been generalized as a key word in the public, social, and economic sphere. Most of the time, its definition is reduced to the environmental pillar or ecological issues. In the worst cases, it only consists in a greenwashing. As a socially controversial issue, SD generates contradictory speeches, not only in the scientific fields, but also in the political sphere and in the media, affecting pupils' perceptions. Teachers have to face those incomplete and sometimes opposite perceptions of SD in their classroom, and they frequently feel quite inadequate to face the questions and emotional reactions of the children. Lastly, because of its Western political origin, SD may appear as an instrument to influence pupils, a kind of propaganda, encouraging them to join that vision of a single-track thinking about our common future. Referring to moral values, the teaching of SD reveals a rupture with the French traditional way of teaching, which is based on critical mind as a part of citizenship. We can understand that teachers' professional setting, scientific knowledge, and ethical principles are shaken. Nicole Tutio-Guillon concludes in 2013, how do you position yourself as a teacher and as a citizen when teaching SD requires to educate children for the future according to fair moral standards, but when there is no existing debate about these standards, neither about the relevance of SD to achieve them? This assertion really reveals a potential cognitive dissonance for the teaching profession. According to the progressive skills devolution since les Accords de Matignon in 1988, New Caledonia is in charge of first and secondary school. But while the first school curricula is completely formulated by New Caledonia, the preservation of baccalaureate as an achievement of secondary school led only to minor changes in the French curriculum, which is said adapted. Regarding the present case, the adaptations in the geography programs essentially concern the choice of case studies for which the Pacific area is promoted. Those case studies represent almost half of the duration of teaching geography. But by choosing local case examples, the adapted program encourages pupils to improve their understanding about their immediate local environment through natural, economic, social, cultural, and political issues. For example, in the 7th grade, the lesson called Hazard and Development, you can see here, this is a French curriculum for which teachers are free to choose any country for a case study. And this is the Caledonian adapted curriculum, the same lesson, where teachers are encouraged to choose a country in the Pacific area. So there's only minor changes between the two curricula. In any case, according to the pedagogical freedom, teachers are still free to choose other case studies. Through this research, we try to identify, through a small sample of semi-guided interviews of varied members of the local teaching system, the existence of specificities in teaching SD by Caledonian geography teachers. Our working hypothesis was that in addition to the previous obstacle mentioned above, we can notice specific local characteristics. Regarding the didactic adapted context and confronting the lack of local sustainable case studies in land planning or natural resource management, for example, the first questioning was, how can SD teaching be pertinent in the New Caledonian context? Strategies of teachers vary. Some of them choose local non-sustainable cases, for instance, land town planning in the new area of Dambéa-sur-Mer, or the new corridor flow called Neobus, and they highlight the lack of sustainability in those projects. This choice leads to a statement of failure comparing to the UN SD standards. But most of the time, teachers choose sustainable case studies in Western countries and in France, trying to relate it to the day-to-day environment of the pupils. Interviews suggest that teachers' cultural background and personal history may interfere with their choices and their approach. And surprisingly, not so many Kanak teachers choose local case examples, whereas they should be in the best position to do so because of their ancient knowledge of the land. Secondly, regarding the Oceanian cultural context supported by an ontological link with nature and the prominent place of the group and community, the central question was, is local knowledge included in the teaching of SD? What is, or indeed is there, a place for a non-Western way of thinking the relationships between humans and between humans and nature? Only a small minority of teachers even mentioned this point during the interviews. Only a few teachers try to rely on the Oceanian cultural background or the way of life of pupils and their family in order to contextualize. They do not even think about basing or even extending the SD teaching to the Kanak informal knowledge of nature. For example, the Oceanian custom of reallocating money for special events, for marriage, death, etc., is not identified as a method of shrinking inequalities in Kanak society. Another example, the traditional calendar fixed by the yam cultivation cycle or the arrival of the whales do not appear as a sustainable way of resources management. Despite inviting Caledonian teachers to base their SD approach on local case studies, the adapted geography program seems to not meet its purpose. A large majority of teachers still use Western examples and do not identify or include local knowledge or way of life as a part of Caledonian sustainable development. There are several explanatory factors for that. A lack of local background knowledge for a lot of self-taught teachers, a lack of pertinent local case studies in a country involved in a non-sustainable economic development, which is based on mineral exploitation and which is not self-sufficient for most of its needs. A willingness to avoid urgent social issues regarding the incomplete development of New Caledonia and the obvious socio-economical inequalities, especially between Nouméa and the bush and between the different communities. A conscious or unconscious self-censorship from teachers who consider cultural subjects as private issues, that is to say, in the same way as political or religious beliefs in a French secular teaching approach. And a conscious or unconscious cultural inferiority complex due to a long-term colonization and a Western worldwide mainstream thinking. To conclude, helping teachers and encouraging them to contextualize their SD teaching first lies in providing a stronger local background and useful pedagogical tools to use in their classes in order to diversify their pedagogical practices. In the medium term, a new secondary geography curriculum, the new geography curriculum, in effect in 2018, will offer the opportunity of a renewed SD approach, not by teaching what sustainability is, but by questioning the actual reality in its diversity and the different ways to SD. In the long term, we place our hopes in creating a decolonized curriculum in order to decolonize people's minds and rehabilitate Melanesian and Oceanian cultures. This could be reached by changing the definition of SD itself in the Caledonian curriculum by using, for example, the large approach, including the cultural and the democratic pillar, to encourage local actors, Caledonian teachers and pupils to involve themselves in a Caledonian way to promote sustainable development. Thank you.
We are podcasting the panel, that's why people have to be seated here.
Hello to everyone. First of all, I want to apologize because my accent is really awful. My English is very approximative, but I will try to do my best. My name is Mathieu Solier. I'm a philosophy teacher in a Catholic high school in Nouméa called Blaise Pascal. It's the name of a great French philosopher. So that's why. And also I am the high school SD referent since 1 year. More clearly, since I have seen the movie entitled Demain in French, Tomorrow. I don't know if you have seen this movie, which woke me up from my individualist sleep. I will quickly try to clarify the most fundamental and philosophical challenges of SD in educational context. And my friend and colleague, Paul, will take examples that have been experienced in Catholic schools to illustrate these challenges.
Good afternoon for everyone. I try also to perform in English as my colleague here. But before the reflection of experience of Catholic school is issue from 4 and 5 years of experience here. So we are trying to humbly expose our experience. So, up to you.
There are two reasons to address the issue of SD in Oceania, and especially in New Caledonia. First, the link to the land is an essential component of community identity, and which is also important, the climate is particularly conducive to undertaking ecological activities with students throughout the year. As teachers and educators reference in the field of SD and private education, we wish to testify experiences that have been carried out in Catholic schools. These experiences allowed us to identify three types of fundamental issues that are intrinsically linked. First, educational issues, then cultural issues, and finally, political issues. So for the educational challenges, we can say that too often, even today, the education provided to students focuses exclusively on knowledge and abandons the question of skills and attitudes. Students in New Caledonia have about 30 hours by week of theory classes, mostly lectures. So what we call in French, they sit on the asses. Sorry. Only 2 hours of physical activity. So there is a problem. The introduction of ecological activities in institutions has had several virtuous effects. First, enhance physical activity and allow students to find a better balance between intellectual exercises and physical exercises, gardens, recycling activities. So we are human beings. That means that we are not only spirits. The body is essential. Next virtuous effect, focus on the practice and not just on the theory, or how to make concrete and applied use of theories seen in class. Finally, and most importantly, promote cooperation among students and among teachers around a common project, and not the competition for grades, the bachelor, in 3 weeks in New Caledonia, it would have been 3 weeks, and not the competition for grades and an exclusively individual success. The purpose of these activities, to enable young people to become enlightened and solidarity citizens, actors of the society of tomorrow, and not just consumers.
Here is a picture of an example of activities. It's the art of permaculture. It's not far from here in the capital, Nouméa. It's 120 kilometers far from here. It's a village of Borai, you know, for some who has already visited the country. And it have several targets, especially to the goals against starvation and food, and also solidarity and education too. So this is one of. I invite you to go there in our establishment, in our school over there.
Secondly, the cultural issues. New Caledonia, as like other societies, is a multicultural society, rich in its ethnic, cultural, and human differences. If intercultural exchanges are present, there is a little space for the different communities to exchange deeply their respective cultures and traditional knowledge, Audrey, sorry, Amandine, a few minutes ago, mentioned the essential question: where is there a place for traditional knowledge and to open to non-Western cultures? The SD is an opportunity to discover or rediscover the traditions of these cultures, which, contrary to Western cultures focused on the idea of progress and continuous development, have developed harmonious links with nature. The challenge here is also to allow younger generations to open up to traditional knowledge, particularly with regard to knowledge of the properties and virtues of plants. Openness to other cultures and traditional knowledge, all too often forgotten, is clearly the condition for fostering coexistence.
Here are the two examples for food and medical application. We have Tammany Hall here in the south of the country. It's in the area of Yate, and also here they eat guava, their leaves for stomachache too, and the fruits provide vitamin C, if I can say like this.
Finally, the political challenges. We can say that SD makes it possible to give meaning to politics and citizenship. With SD, everyone is called to cooperate with each other and to feel part of a whole world that exceeds it. The focus is not so much on profit, but on the solidarity and commitment of people to a healthier and more equitable way of life. Not only does SD promote values of well-being and living together, but it also offers solutions to one of the biggest threats to our societies, that of food security. By focusing on short circuits and the importance of the local, SD make countries less dependent on financial flows and the risk of food shortages.
I just want to hear with this diapo to remind you that the Pope has written Laudato Si. It's over there, and also recently there is the common declaration with Pope Patriarch Bartolome, the 1st of September, who they said they allowed people to take care of our earth.
So to conclude, the challenge of SD is twofold: the preservation of nature, natural resources, but also revaluation of the human. Our creed: it is by taking care of nature that we can humanize ourselves and become true citizens of the world. Thank you very much.
Merci.
I'm really sorry. I cannot stay more longer to answer the questions, hopefully for me, because I have a class council, so I have to go. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Gérald Giacomino. I'm a senior education advisor at Touitou Middle School and the unit of the Professional High School in Nouvelle. I'm pleased to present you the project we worked on with our students. Ouvea is an island situated in the northeast of the mainland in the Loyalty Islands in New Caledonia. There are 3,374 people in Ouvea. Its population has considerably decreased for the last 10 years due to an important rural exodus. The public middle school and the unit of the professional high school are both situated in the tribe of Lekin in the south of the island. Now, we have 124 students from 11 to 21 years old. The particular connection to the land, which characterizes Kanak culture, constitutes a strong, reassuring, and balanced point of reference for our children. As a reminder, in the Kanak cosmology, humans do not own the land, but belong to the land. Space, time, and social relationships are given meanings through and are organized around this connection. That is why, in the rural and customary context of the atoll of Ouvea, it seemed relevant to us to work to introduce this notion of a connection to the land into the school framework as a common thread linking the everyday life experience of our pupils and their school experience. The engagement of the public middle school and the unit of the professional high school of Ouvea with education for sustainable development comes from the willingness to propose a society model which takes into account the influences of modernity without forgetting the values, the culture, and the history of Kanak society. This engagement comes fully within the scope of the third ambition of the educational project of New Caledonia, which is to create an environment conducive to work for a better self-fulfillment of the pupil at school, and that invites all schools to take part in a certified initiative for sustainable development. Ouvea is on a customary land on an atoll included in the UNESCO World Heritage List and still has pristine natural sea and land environments, thanks to little polluting human activities and the absence of industries. Modernization, however, has an inexorable impact on the nature. This is in particular due to the absence of waste management, especially electronic waste, motor vehicle, batteries, computers, oil motors. On the small atoll of the Royalty Islands, nature has an extremely delicate balance. How shall we prepare our students to face these major and vital environmental issues while ensuring their personal fulfillment and their success at school? In order to reach this goal, at the discussions around the development of the educational project of New Caledonia, we decided to choose an educational project for sustainable development that will lead our students to take on the challenge of self-fulfillment through education for sustainable development. The approach implemented in this project will enable to give meanings to school learning, to gather the adults and the children around a common project based on the principle of co-education, and finally, to promote a healthy lifestyle by encouraging to produce and consume healthy and varied food. Our project is made up of 3 key stages. The first one consists of raising awareness about the benefit of having cultivation mounds in the tribes. Proximity from the huts, the main traditional type of housing in the island. The possibility of producing a great variety of vegetables. The use of an organic form of agriculture, which uses little water. The positive impact it can have on the health and the ecosystem. This stage consists of visiting a Biopacifica certified self-producer in the tribe, yes, in the tribe of Takeji, sorry. From this visit, 2 willing participating pupils, students, became the referent people for permaculture for the middle school and the local unit of the professional high school. They become honorary members of the local BOI association and benefit from specific training to become experts and rapporteurs for their classmates. The second stage consists of hindering the students with the necessary technical and theoretical knowledge for the creation, the maintenance, and the optimization of the production of the permanent mounds. That is, by creating mounds within the school, 8 mounds in total, according to the instructions received, the observations made on the ground, and the scientific explanations given by the life and earth sciences and physics teachers, elements necessary for the growth of plants, the production of nitrogen, potassium, carbon. This stage also consists in demonstrations and explanations given in the school by members of the BOI association and supported by the contents of life and earth sciences and physics subjects according to their own subject framework. It is also at this stage that the methods of composting will be learned, with the creation of a compost zone within the school. All the green waste collected on the school ground will be used, as well as the methods for creating manures and treating plants and shrubs with the use of natural fertilizers and organic pesticides made by the students. Finally, the third stage aims at initiating and overseeing the creation of one or several mounds at the student's home, while providing a form of assessment of the previous 2 stages. Therefore, it consists of a visit of the mounds created by the students. This visit is concomitantly led by some of the school staff, as well as members of the BOI association, on the occasion of a mission called the Tower of the Mounds. It is a tower which aims at measuring the reinvestment of the knowledge and the skills acquired at school, but also at confirming the support from parents and at encouraging an exchange between parents and children and between parents and staffs, school staffs, so as to co-educate better. At the moment, we are going to begin the third stage of our project, and the students are active, enthusiastic, and satisfied to be involved in this project. This experience of co-education for sustainable development involves the whole middle school and the local unit of the professional high school in a large collective dynamic. It involves the school staff, the students and their families, customary partners and associative partners within the framework of the soon-to-be labelized process E3D, Schools Toward Sustainable Development. This educational approach aspires to strengthen the connection to the land, which is essential in a Kanak environment by giving meaning to what is learned at school. It also contributes to the development of local and varied food crops, energy efficient and respectful of human beings, by offering food free of pesticides and artificial fertilizers, by means of a hands-on theoretical education close to the cultural reality of our students. We therefore take up the challenge that our children will become tomorrow the ambassadors in their tribes of this mode of sustainable agricultural production, which respects human beings, the earth, and the local ecosystem. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, and here is the worst English accent. Hello everybody, my presentation is about the use of transmedia in education for sustainable development in New Caledonia, the case of the HIP-HOP project. So my name is Jean-François, in English Jeff, and I'm a doctoral student in Information and Communication Sciences at the University in New Caledonia. My research theme is about the digital in high school of New Caledonia. I'm interested by the inclusion of digital technologies in the high school, and I'm especially interested in the digital use of the teacher and the transformation of the school form. For this presentation, I worked with my co-director of thesis, who is Giacomino. She is a lecturer at the University of New Caledonia, a researcher in Information and Communication Sciences. So, at first, I'm gonna present you the context. So the adaptation of educational politics with respect to the environment dates back to the 70s with the Tbilisi conference organized by UNESCO in 1977. In 2004, a circular calls for the generalization of education for sustainable development, EDD. Thus, the term environment progressively disappears, leaving its place to education for sustainable development. In the book of reference of UNESCO on education for sustainable published in 2012, we can notice a rather content-driven approach mentioning pedagogical material and teaching structure, organization, duration, or evaluation, which, however, does not deal with the role that innovating practices and devices can play in the type of education. So, what is the HIP-HOP project? In 2016, the Institute for Research of Development, IRD, and Radio France International initiates the HIP-HOP project, He Participatory Observers Project, which aims to create a citizen information network for understanding of climate change and islander. Moreover, it's a project. This project is to establish an international network of young observers, like a college student, who will collaborate in the production and dissemination of information and knowledge using transmedia that combine video, radio, and multimedia. This approach, human and intergenerational, is intended to question the scientific community, that of scientists and the media, just as it is to challenge the decision makers of our world, still too often removed from realities. In this context, our presentation proposed to explore the link between education and sustainable development through the use and the design of transmedia. We focus on the different transformation involved in the HIP-HOP project and the use of digital in the school context. So my question is, which transformation can we emphasize? Firstly, the digital culture of young people and their daily use of tools such as the smartphone or camera are inserted in a strict academic normative framework. Here, we are talking about classical school, from which is defined as a space-time that isolates students from society. Thus, with the HIP-HOP project, traditional school standards are questioning because skills and digital use from the private sphere are exploited in environmental prevention project. As Jean-François Solier says, as the use of technology intensify, the acceptation, values, and behavior of school users are different from those that constitute the classical school form. Secondly, the actor posture such as public institution is also questioned. Previously, it was the main actor who tried to educate students about environmental issues. Henceforth, his use of transmedia in teaching and the project like HIP-HOP contributes to the emergence of an active pedagogy that lets the student become not only experimenters, but also producers of knowledge, as well as media designers. To be more precise, the active learning aims to make the student a participant in his learning, so that he builds his knowledge through research situation. And thirdly, the HIPPO project showed that education is changing and becoming a network organization, including a heterogeneity of actors involved in joint projects. Network education with multi-project tends to displace the organization at the formal school system. In the new educational form, the roles of each actor in education has turned upside down, and the student become more and more a central actor on this new area. And what's perspective for the HIPPO project? For the moment, the project is implemented in pilot countries such as Nouvelle-Calédonie, New Zealand, Fiji, or Vanuatu. Nearly 50 young people are involved, and the number will increase. I hope so, in the years to come. And dozen video will soon be broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and the local TV channel Caledonia. Now the perspective is that some people participate in a COP23, which will be organized in Bonn in Germany in the November month. Yes, and to conclude, I will show you a video that was produced in Boai, a village of New Caledonia, and you can see on the map.
Burai, pote, por el niño de Blaise. Avant 1942. Peut-être dans le temps, les champs ont changé, les temps ont changé. Il y avait les crevettes, il y avait les anguilles, toutes sortes de... Mais maintenant, il n'y a presque plus. On dit que c'est la sécheresse, quoi. L'anguille, c'est la première, quand il y a les coutumes et tout ça. C'est l'anguille qui va en premier. La coutume, c'est un devoir de tous les vieux depuis le temps, depuis longtemps. Et quand tout cela disparaît, ça veut dire que la coutume, elle tombe un peu d'un côté parce que il manque ce qui porte la coutume. Oui. Mais quand le climat va changer d'un coup comme ça, là, ça va ressortir dans quoi? Dans la nature, dans l'herbe, dans l'air que tu respires, tout. Mais nous, on n'a pas vécu ça. Ça va changer, tout à fait. Mais est-ce qu'on pourra vivre dedans? Non, moi je dis ça, quoi. Ça va être difficile.
Please don't cry. Okay. Okay. I just want to finish by saying that we must trust and put the young people at the center of current issues. We must to leave them in the important place to contribute to the creation of the world of tomorrow. Yes, thanks for your attention.
Okay, so thank you for the presentations, and I hope you liked them. We will begin. I prepared some questions because I had the chance to know the presentations before, so I could prepare some questions, and we cheated, so we prepared some questions, which means I sent them some questions to prepare in advance. Okay, you know everything. And after those first questions, You will ask some questions if you want to, okay? So I will begin with Amandine. So Amandine, you emphasize in your paper on the scientific, social, and moral controversies related to the concept of sustainable development. So my question is, do these controversies appear in the teaching of sustainable development in Caledonian geography classes, or are students receiving a teaching in which these aspects become invisible?
Thank you. I have to say I didn't prepare the answer. Sorry for that. To be honest, I think that political issues do not appear in the classroom. I mean that children are seated on their asses, as you said, and they are listening to the teacher as if it was the only way of thinking. Because of their age, because they are young, they not really question about what they are listening to. And moreover, because I try to explain that there's two ways in the French curriculum to deal with SD, and I focused on the teaching way, so the lecture way of teaching SD. They do not question this. It's a lesson. They have to know it by heart, and that's it. But what appear in classroom is that when teachers, usually they make a big effort to rely on to the day-to-day environment of the pupils. Even if, as I explained, even if usually they don't use local case studies, they try to make a link with the local environment. And at that point, there are big reactions from children. For example, one of the teachers, which one of my interview was with a teacher who worked in the in Kone in the north, so in the bush, and they in this high school they were, how to say, they've seen the mineral factory coming out of the earth because they constructed a few years ago a very, very big factory there in the north. And so pupils saw their way of life changing because they were used to live in a more natural environment, and this little village became a real town. And there's been, don't know how to say, but there's now real roads, and they have to work on, c'est comment on dit les trottoirs? Footpaths, yeah. And before that, there were no footpaths. So they've seen their way of life changing. And this teacher tried to study this case through a sustainability point of view. And she highlights with children the fact that this factory gave to, how to say, this factory leads to a lot of environmental effects. Damage, thank you, a lot of damage through nature. And so children used to say, oh yes, that's not a good thing. This factory there's a lot of damage and a lot of pollution because of the factory. And then she said, yes, but it gives some jobs. And a lot of pupils in this class, in those classes, have one or two people in their family working there in that factory. So they understand that the reality is not so simple, and that reaching SD is not simple at all.
Okay, Thank you, Amandine, for this answer. The second question will be to Gérald. Okay. So, Gérald, in your presentation, you mentioned at the end the involvement of families, which is necessary, as you said, to bring the school culture and the culture of the student closer together. So I know this aspect is very important to you in your work at this middle school. So my question is, does this project really bring parents closer to school and change their perspective on their children's education at school?
Thank you for this question. I have to say I have prepared my answer. So, in first time, this project must bring school closer to parents. For now, we're just going to begin the third stage of the project. What I can say is many parents have a painful background in relation with school. This bad experience keep a distance between parents and school and doesn't allow the co-education that should enable the success of the child. This is the reason why, thanks to this project, school goes to their place in order to look for the parents and bring them to the school the second time. That seems to us a way to create a true and a strong partnership between parents and school.
Thank you, Gérald. The third question is for Paul and Mathieu, so Paul alone now. Okay. So, Paul, in your presentation, you mentioned both the issue of promoting Melanesian knowledge and lifestyles, and at the same time, you mentioned the need to promote a new way of life through school. So my question is, what is the Melanesian inspiration for the lifestyle you are talking about? It is a simple return to a traditional way of life or something else?
Thanks you for the question, Stephane. I will try to answer with but step by step, because it's not a new way of life. It's just an adaptation of a traditional custom to life, new life, modern life. Yeah. Actually, I just have a think to our colleague. He's on the north of the country. It's an island which named Belep. Actually, we are drinking quietly water. Over there, people and students have a lack of water. And this morning, the director called me, help, because we haven't water. How can we do to have water? And just to say we have anxious practices and how to have adapt filter or extract water of sea water, and they have forgotten these anxious practices. So we are today, we have a gap between electronic devices and the real need in local country. I have a question also to you, because this morning I have listened Nigel, Carol, and I forgot, Dean. Because I have a question, because he was he's making a research, and I was thinking of him because just to ask younger people what they want to for the actual Earth, not only for the 20 years old, for the 18 years old, but also for youngest. What's hope to the future life. So, and the second thing is the second observation is to Carol. Why not to visit Belep just to see the disaster? Thanks you.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So I had a question for Jean-François, but he told me a few minutes ago that my question wasn't relevant. Yes. So, so I won't ask this particular question, okay? And I'm going to skip for the last question, and it is a question for everyone here at the table. So one of the recurring issues in your presentation is the question of the students as actors of the learning process and of their personal development, but also that of the need to provide students with concrete experiences related to the real world. So my question is, to what extent can culture play a role in this process, and how can its vision be useful for education for sustainable development? Who wants to answer first? Not relevant?
No.
Okay.
I think I answered when I was first talking. I think that at that point now, the Connect knowledge is not included. I hope I was clear. For me, it's not included in geography teaching. It can be, and it is, including in the SD practical approach, the multidisciplinary approach of SD. And I said that I hope that for the future, in few years or perhaps later, we can really change the program, the geography program, not to make it a Connect program, but to make it a Caledonian program, and not only an so-called adapted program from the French one. And that's it. I mean, I think that Caledonia, independent or not, has to create and to think about a geography program and history and so on, but which is not adapted, but real, I mean, that looks like what is Caledonia. That's it.
And I've got another question. And do you think that the first grade geography program, which is a Caledonian program, is a good one?
Are you sure you want I answer?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Okay.
Because it's a Caledonian one. So.
Yes, yes. So the geography primary school program is almost an old geography way, old geography point of view that I explained this morning for those ones who were so lucky to be with me in the Talano. As I explained this morning, it's a way of thinking the relationships between humans and nature based on determination. That is to say that the nature is very natural environment define the way we are living, define our way of society and our lifestyles. And so for me, the primary geography program are even worse than the secondary one.
Okay, so it will be hard to find a solution. So, okay. Gérald, maybe something about the last question? No? Paul?
Just to do a focus for Melanesian knowledge, because nowadays we are thinking about language, Connect language in culture and Melanesian language in our program, and by this way, maybe it will be a great hope to reintroduce knowledge in our practices for SDD goals.
Jean-François?
Yes. Yeah, I just want to say that Kana culture is based on the strong link to nature. For example, the life of the clan is regulated by the yam farming. The social time runs parallel to the cycle of the tuber, which determines the dates of a great event. In tribes, young people grow up with the relationship to nature. They learn directly with concrete experiences, such as make a field or building a shack. These concrete experiences contribute to their learning and personal development. A teacher friend who is in Canada, in the Naketi tribe, told me that tribal children learn in nature with family and friends. They learn with them and through experience. And when they arrive at the school, the learning is more abstract and the experience of life is limited to the four walls of the classroom. For these reasons, the school must build and take the example of this process of learning by experience and leave more room for know-how.
Thank you very much. So we have now 10 minutes for extra questions. So we are very brave, but we accept non-prepared questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Taro Komatsu of Sophia University in Japan. I have a question to Amandine, am I pronouncing your name correct? You mentioned that the teachers here in this, teachers in this country have, they do not incorporate case studies from local areas much in the classrooms. And you mentioned some reasons. I wonder if that's also because of the way year-end exams or entrance exams to move to higher levels of education are organized. If those exams do not value the students' knowledge of local context, and if the teachers see their role as preparing their students to pass those exams, the teachers may be constrained, when they want to introduce local context. Is that what's happening also?
Not really, because the SD approach is essentially in classes where there's no graduate at the end. So in terminal, that is the grade for baccalaureate, the program is exactly the same in France and here. For my part, in geography, it's exactly the same because the main goal, the key theme is the globalization. So exactly the same. So the graduate do not affect the choices of teachers, but what affects the programs is that baccalaureate is still at the end of the secondary school. So till this baccalaureate is the same in France, I mean, it's a national diploma, till it's, as long as baccalaureate is still the last diploma, then going to university, and as long as Caledonia wants for its children to have this baccalaureate and the chance to go to other universities, so the programs will be only adapted and not really change. But what can change, to my opinion, It's not in lycée. Comment on dit lycée? La différence entre collège, high school, and before middle school. Okay. What can be changed? It's in the middle school. Because in the middle school, there's no baccalaureate. So we can change everything. We can create something really new and something reflecting the diversity of Caledonia.
Just to complete the words of Amandine, there's only question of diploma, special diploma for environment, c'est bac pro environnement. Ouais, professional diploma. It's with which specialty under ecology. Here you have.
My name is Anne Hickling Hudson, and I teach at a university in Australia. I train teachers. Thank you for a really interesting panel with excellent projects going in the school system on sustainable development. I was really impressed by what you're doing. But because I'm originally from the Caribbean, I'm very interested in the relationship between French colonialism and Melanesia. The first thing I notice is that the panel of professors appears to me white. And I want to know, why is this so? Why aren't there Melanesian professors offering their views on sustainable development in education? It's surprising because I know that there's a radical tradition in France of, that respects the independence of former colonies. And I wondered how much you are doing to train Melanesians to become professors who could present panels like this.
So, in our School of Education, we have a lot of Kanak students, not as many as we wanted to have Kanak students, but we have Kanak students. We have also Kanak students at the university, which is something important, is that today the success of Kanak students in university education is very low. It's better than it used to be, but it is still very low. And things are, I think, beginning to change, but it's a very long change, and I think we are just at the beginning, okay? So, for instance, to teach history and geography in middle school, high schools, there are just a few Kanak teachers, and most of them are not certified teachers, but I don't know how to say it in English. Sorry. Des remplaçants. Yeah, when there is a teacher that is ill or with a problem, replacement teachers, okay? And I think that in other disciplines than history of geography, you can find maybe more, but in the secondary education, you don't have so many Kanak teachers, except if you look at Kanak languages teachers, for instance, in middle schools and high schools. The situation is a little bit different in the first grade, but not that different, because in the elementary education, you also have a large majority of white teachers. Okay? I'm not sure I am answering your question, but here are some elements.
The thing is, in the primary school, as I tried to explain, the Caledonia is completely responsible about the primary school. So they organize a special exam to re-equilibrate the differences between the communities, as in order that the teachers reflect the society in Caledonia. But for secondary school, the exam is still a French one. So you have, for example, you have a written part, and after an oral part, for the oral part, you must go to France. You must go to France. It's not organized here. I mean, even that, it's only like 3 years ago that I'm here to work in the School of Teaching, and I've seen some students who take for the first time, sometimes for the first time, take airplane to go there, and then when they arrived in France, taking the first time of their life the train. So for some of them, they just feel completely, yeah, it's too much, too much, and I don't know how to say, it's very an emotional experience for them even to go there. So I think those invisible things as a part of this exam is very important. Sorry.
The question of exams is very important because, you know, you should not in these days have a society that depends on France to set and mark exams. I mean, in the 1970s, there was a movement away from colonial countries, and since then, in other areas, these people have been setting and marking their own exams, including in the English-speaking Caribbean. So to come here and find that you're living in the 1960s,
yes, it is
very surprising.
Right.
Very
You're
surprising.
Right. You're right. It's the same for internet, for the radio, for everything. It's almost 1960s or 70s. You're right.
To complete Amandine, there's a special program here from the government who name 400 cadres, ou cadre avenir, who promote teacher, Melanesian teacher to form, to be teacher. But the situation is different in the private education. There's a much more local teacher and professor and Melanesian teacher also.
And Jean-François wanted to add that is...
Yes, just in precision, I was white skin, but I'm a Kanak and European mix. So yes, I think this question is a little bit difficult in our time because yes, the mix is le métissage est de plus en plus présent. Comment tu peux dire ça?
There is more and more mix between populations.
Yeah, and my friends, he's like they're like me, European mother and father Kanak, and for me, we have to question the condition of our people and for observe the réussite, quoi. The success, the achievement. Yeah, for me, this is the question. Goes.
Last question, please. Yeah.
I just want to change direction a little bit. We've heard a couple of people talk about the reason we need a new curriculum is to build health, and we've seen little agricultural projects. And then so you've got a theme of health and that. And I can't remember whether it was here, but in the other sessions, they said that in the whole curriculum, there was 2 hours of any physical exercise. And one of the things they were going to do to try to get physical exercise was to have them do some agriculture. But I haven't heard anything about taking the schools to teach them traditional agriculture. We heard a wonderful paper about the yam system as part of their whole calendar and everything. So I haven't heard anyone really linking and involving the community. We had a question about community, but I don't think it was answered on how the community actually was playing a part in the education. And the other part of my question is, I haven't heard a single thing about physical education or sport, and there are traditional sports. And in New Caledonia, the soccer team of New Caledonia, which is made up mainly of Kanaks, is better than the Fijian team in most years. The women's cricket team here is famous, but and to me that's become part of what you might call traditional culture. So I haven't heard anything in the conference at all about physical education and keeping healthy by working, fishing, diving, playing soccer or women's cricket.
Okay. So do the students fish, dive in Uvea, for instance? And play cricket? And play soccer?
Yes, they do, of course. At school, it's different, but you're right. You're right. It's necessary to, as we said in this morning, learning by doing, and all we observe in tribe. We need to see something like this at school, but with the new project of educational project of New Caledonia, it's very recent. It was 2 years now, and we are working to go towards this direction. But there is a long way and a lot of work to go to success in this work.
The last question, because we need to go to the afternoon tea after that.
Yes, thank you for your contributions. It's very interesting to see the steps being made in looking at the pillar of sustainability relating to ecological sustainability, and I know that France is very in favour of the environment, well, the conferences on the climate change and things like that. But there's actually 2 other components of sustainability, one of which is financial sustainability and one of which is human organisational sustainability. And I'm wondering whether anything is taught in the curriculum about financial inclusion, any skills of bookkeeping, cooperative bookkeeping and learning about money and how financial organisations work, or about building the sort of small businesses and organisations that many of the people who are working in agriculture will actually rely on to receive an income of some type when they enter the workforce.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We understood perfectly. So what you are talking about is taught in the...
included in the economical pillar, or are you talking about another one, which should be a financial?
L'économie, finance et aussi social.
Perfect. Your French is perfect. Go on, go on. Yeah, in the vocational baccalaureate. Yeah. Durable.
Durability.
Mhm.
Durability écologique, c'est bien, mais je demande s'il y a les autres aspects de durabilité qui ont aussi dans le curriculum.
Okay.
In geography, we try to study some cases, and we relate it on the three pillars: the economic one, the ecologic one, and the social one. And we try to encourage children to understand or to status if this case is sustainable or not, depending on the places of each pillars. It is each pillars together in this, for example, when you study a town planning or an area planning, we are wondering if there is, if this plan can create some economical enrichissement, wellness. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Economic benefits. Does it make some damages on the environment, or did they think about the issues about energies and everything? And does this area contribute to shrink the social inequalities? And so they have to status if this case is sustainable or not.
Okay.
But about just the financial issues, usually we don't talk about money.
Yeah, we don't study bookkeeping in geography,
No,
but
we don't.
they can study bookkeeping
perhaps in economy. Perhaps in economy,
in
but it's only
economy,
in
yeah, in
the
economy
for
class.
the older one.
Okay. Now it's time for the afternoon tea. So you need to take the same road you took this morning. So back to the School of Education. You will have the afternoon tea at the School of Education, I hope with more milk that you had this morning. So the final session today will begin at 4, and we'll end this session at, Yves, you want to say something? At 5:30, and bus back to hotels are at 5:45.
Whoa.
5:45 for the bus back to hotels. Huh?
Just for the sunset.
Just for the sunset, yes. And tomorrow morning the bus will be at 7:15, like today. Wait. But thank you.